Welcome to Rearview Diaries. I'm your host, Paul. Rearview Diaries is a passion project I started where I drive a rideshare and meet random strangers and get their stories. Today's story is a unique one. It's a 3 steps towards success. So let me start out with my passenger that came into my car. He came in smiling, great attitude, and just great energy. So as we start driving, he first, of course, thanked me and for picking him up, and I thanked him for being on time. And then we continued on, and he had a great smile. So I started with the same thing, and I asked him, hey, what brings you here? And, just a small talk. And then eventually I told him I had to come clean. I'm driving a rideshare right now for my passion project. So he's, and I told him I'd love to hear stories about random strangers. And so he goes to me, he goes, well, I have a story for you. And he goes, all of a sudden he got very serious. He goes, well, my upbringing was very tough. I grew up in foster care system. And then when I turned 18, he was incarcerated. And so he was in jail for 6 years. But he said that was just the beginning of how he turned his life around. So when he got to jail, he said he was scared. There were just so many. He said every day was very difficult just to sleep and just to survive at age 18. So he went to the church, met the chaplain there, and he had he developed a good relationship. And later on, he said maybe about a week later, he talked to the chaplain and asked him, sir, I really don't want to be here. I'm really scared, and I need to figure out how to get out. And the chaplain told him, more than half of you guys are going to go out and come right back in. And he goes, well, I don't want to be those guys. What do I need to do, sir? So he goes, well, the first step is you need to really claim everything you've done for all the problems you caused, why you got here. So first admit to your problems and really study them so that you will not commit that again. And after he told me, I realized that kind of relates to even our lives. When we make mistake, we need to make sure we see what kind of mistake we made so we don't make the same mistake again. So he did really refer to even my life and for everybody else's life. And so he got that. He said the second step is you need to disassociate with people that got you in trouble. And that way you don't come back in again. So what he did was he stayed away from everybody else. He basically, at that point, he started to work in the kitchen. So he would be in the kitchen, and when he's free, he would go to the library and study, because he said he believes he wants to get a better education or learn something else, especially to prepare himself for the future. And that really kind of makes sense, because for us to really disassociate with people that gives us negative energy, negative feedback, people who makes us bad, I think that could be applied to all of us. Getting rid of people that brings us bad influences. So that was very pertinent even in my life. And he said step 3, he said, is you need to work twice as harder than everybody else, because people who succeed work twice as hard. And, he said at the time he couldn't really get it, but he said that eventually when he came out of jail, which we could talk about later, but he said he got that after he got out of jail. So, but if you really think about it, even in our lives, to succeed, we have to work harder than the person next to us. So it was very, very pertinent. But then his story started here. So while he was in jail, he worked at the kitchen, became a chef, and learned how to cook. During those 6 years, he befriended the chaplain, and they kept in touch. And he guided him through the 6 years. Once he was up for parole, the chaplain, highly recommended that he should be released, and the parole officer agreed. So he was released on parole. At the time, the chaplain contacted one of his friends that owns a restaurant and got our friend a job there. So he started, and he said in the beginning he realized what it is to work hard. So he told me that he worked every single day of the month, but only took one day off. And I asked, why only one day? He goes, if I only take one day off, my odds of getting in trouble would be slim. And he goes, I need a day to do my laundry and clean up things and catch up. So he goes, I did that for about 2 years. And during the 2 years, little by little, I worked myself up to be assistant chef to a chef. And when the restaurant owner opened the second restaurant, they brought him on as a chef. So it's in the second year, he's worked really hard as a chef, and the owner asked him to come out and visit some of the patrons. So he would come out and visit the patrons, and they all love meeting the chef. So after about another 6 to 8 months, one of the patrons said, when you have a day off, can you come to my house and cater a dinner for our whole family and friends, because we want to have a party. So before he could say yes, the owner came out and said, when do you want him to be there? So he agreed, and so he started to do side catering at all these private catering events, and he did that for about 1.5 years. So in his 5th year, he said that the owner of the restaurant goes, I think you're ready to start your own business. And he goes, what kind of business? He goes, why don't we go into partnership and you open a catering business? So he opened a catering business, and he stepped in my car 1 year later. And he said his catering business became very, very successful, and he still maintains everything what he learned while he was in prison. He said, 1, again, know all the mistakes you made and study them so you don't make it again. 2, change your people around you. And then 3, work twice as hard. And he did work twice as hard. And he said that it really, really helped him get to where he is right now. And it's so wonderful to see a great successful story. So now he is a very responsible business person, and makes me feel happy to see him in my car.